टुडे विल बी डिस्कस अबाउट लैंग्वेज एंड जेंडर। ओके, आज का हमारा टॉपिक क्या है? लैंग्वेज एंड जेंडर। ओके, द सोशियो लिंग्विस्टिक्स एंड सम रिलेटेड disciplines have studied about the relationship between language and gender. From the early 20th century, there have been studies in linguistic anthropology to study the difference between the man and woman. Speech across the language. Post second wave feminism, the study of gender neutrality has become a growing area of interest. Speech practices associated with gender. The patterns in gender and the language communication that follow are only the norms for each gender. All members of a particular sex may not follow the gender-specific rules that are prescribed by the society. The communicative behavior of both the gender differ in their use of minimal response. The paralinguistic features such as which is the behavior associated with collaborative language use. Women use questions more frequently than men. For men, a question is usually a genuine request for information, but with women, it is often a rhetorical means of engaging the others. Conversational contributions or of acquiring attention from other conversationally involved techniques associated with a collaborative approach to language use. The female linguistic behavior characteristically encompasses a desire to take turns in conversation with others, which is opposed to men's tendency towards centering on their own point or often remain silent. When the same gender friend interaction take place, the males tend to change subject more frequently than females. The female gender link their conversation to previous speakers and develop each other's topics rather than introducing a new one. The female tendency towards self-disclosure, sharing of problems and experiences with others may be for sympathy, drastically contrast with the male tendencies of non-self-disclosure and professing advice or offering a solution when confronted with another's problem. It is also observed the people share more by technology. This phenomenon is known as computer mediated communication, as this form of communications typically involve text only messages that tend to lose their non-verbal cues. Both of the genders usually self-disclose on the computer than they would face-to-face. It is generally seen that people are more confident while using computer-mediated communication because this form of communication is faceless and makes it easier to divulge information. With relation to politeness in spoken language, the female gender is characterized by formal and defense politeness, whereas the male gender is exemplified the camaraderie. The use of language embodies attitude as well as differential meanings. The language of the female gender has its foundation on the attitude that women are marginal to the serious concerns of life which are preempted by men. There are large set of words that are still gender specific. The empty adjectives like divine, precious, lovely, cute, all these are associated with the female gender. The tag questions and rising intonations in statement context like what's your name dear Harry Phillips. Some of the other aspects are the use of heads, use of intensive so hypercorrect grammar. Extra politeness or asking more of questions are all related to the female gender. Next है language and identity. सबसे पहले पढ़ेंगे what is identity. Identity क्या है? The word identity is often used but it is not easy to define. The meaning attributed to it also changes throughout time. In the 19th century, a fairly static idea of national identity was preferred. Very recently, with growing globalization, large groups of people are on the move and the link between place and identity has become less evident. People are increasingly confronted with other cultures. They would also affiliate themselves more consciously with certain aspects of their background. As it happens, they may define themselves on the basis of cultural differences with other groups. Therefore, language religion can start to play a larger role that it had done in the place of origin. Next, identity and language learning. A significant construct in language learning research is identity. Identity is defined as how a person understands his or her relationship to the world, how that relationship is structured across time and space, and how the person understands possibilities for the future. Recognizing language as a social practice, identity highlights how the language constructs and is constructed via a variety of relationships. Just because of the diverse positions from which language learners can participate in social life, identity is theorized as multiple subject to change and a site of struggle. Next, language significant aspect of identity. Whether the language is significant aspect of your identity depends partly on the stance of the language. The reality is very complex. Though the status of language is important but not always. This is so because it is possible that the original language is partly disappearing but it still plays an important symbolic role in a given ethnocultural groups. Think of Wales in Wales. For other groups, language may originally not have been a distinctive feature at all, just like the American Christians from Turkey. In Turkey, which is predominantly Muslim, they would define themselves first and foremost as Christians. Last, social identity and language. When we use language, we do so as individuals with social histories. Our histories are defined in part by our membership in a range of social group into which we are born, gender, social class, religion, and race. The language and identity carry expectations built up over time through socialization into our own social groups about what we can do and cannot do as members of our groups, about what we can do and cannot do as members of our groups. The linguistic resources we use to communicate and our interpretations of those used by others are shaped by these mutuality held perceptions. In brief, we can say that who we are, who we think others are, and who others think we are, meditate in important way of our individual use and evaluations of our linguistic actions in any communicative encounter. Therefore, for we understand that the individuals use language in who construct their everyday worlds and in particular their own social roles and identities and those of others. The language users can display their identity but they cannot affect them in way. Language use and identity are conceptualized rather differently in a sociocultural perspective on human action. The identity is not be seen as singular, fixed and intrinsic in the individual, rather it is viewed as socially constitute a reflexive dynamic product of the social, historical and political context of an individual's lived experiences. Okay? Thank you for watching.